On the surface, this story looks like a truly horrific home invasion, the kind that shatters a quiet suburban family. But as you're about to see, what investigators uncovered was a web of lies so deep and a betrayal so shocking, it's almost hard to believe it's real. This is the incredible story of Jennifer Pan. So our story kicks off on November 8th, 2010, in Markham, Ontario. An emergency call comes in and it's absolutely frantic. A young woman is on the line claiming that armed men have burst into her home, shot her parents, and tied her up. I mean, it's the nightmare scenario you think could never happen in your own neighborhood. When the police get there, the scene is just tragic. Bitch Pan, the mother, she's already dead. Her husband, Han Pan, is clinging to life with multiple gunshot wounds. And then there's their daughter, Jennifer. She's found tied up, but physically, she's completely unharmed. To everyone on the scene, it looked like she was the sole, deeply traumatized survivor of a terrible crime. But, as the investigation starts to get rolling, this story of the perfect victim, it starts to unravel a little bit. See, detectives are trained to spot details that just don't quite fit, and in this case, there were a lot of them. And this was really the first major red flag for the investigators. Think about it. In a crime this violent, why would you leave an eyewitness behind? That's a huge risk for the people who did this. Why was Jennifer spared when her parents were shot so brutally? That was the big question that needed an answer. And the questions just kept piling up from there. For one, Jennifer was left without a scratch on her. Then there's the fact that she somehow managed to call 911 while her hands were supposedly tied behind her back. And for a home invasion robbery, a whole lot of valuable stuff was just left behind. Her story, which you'd expect to be chaotic and confused, felt strangely polished, a little too perfect. And then came the moment that just blew the whole case wide open. Han Pan, Jennifer's father, miraculously wakes up from his coma. And his memory of that night, it's chillingly different from his daughter's. He tells the police he saw Jennifer talking with one of the attackers, not in fear, but whispering, almost like they were friends. This was the testimony that changed everything. With her father's testimony, Jennifer's entire story just collapsed. Just 2 weeks after the attack, police brought her in for what was her third interview. Only this time, she wasn't going home. The sole survivor, the grieving daughter, was now the #1 suspect in the murder of her own mother and the attempted murder of her father. So this leads to the huge question, right? Why? Why would she do this? Well, to understand the motive, we have to rewind the clock and uncover this secret double life Jennifer had been living for almost a decade, a life built entirely on lies, all to meet the impossibly high expectations of her parents. The gap between who her parents thought she was and who she actually was is just staggering. Her parents, who were immigrants with really high hopes for her, believed she was the star student at a top university, acing her pharmacology program, volunteering at a hospital, just the perfect daughter. But the reality? She'd failed a critical high school course, never even graduated, and had been faking her entire university life for years. And the dedication to this lie, it was something else. I mean, she didn't just tell a story. She built an entire fake world to back it up. She was forging report cards, buying old textbooks, and spending her days in libraries, filling notebooks with fake class notes, all to keep up the charade. Well, eventually, a lie that big is going to come crashing down. Her parents found out the truth, and as punishment, they put her on an even tighter leash. They forbade her from seeing her boyfriend, Daniel Wong, who was pretty much the only person who knew her secret life. And for Jennifer, that was it. That was the final straw. She felt completely trapped, and that's when a truly desperate plan started to take shape. And this is where the story takes its darkest turn. Her web of lies wasn't enough anymore. It escalated into a carefully planned murder-for-hire plot designed so that Jennifer could finally be free and, in her mind, inherit all of her parents' money. With help from her boyfriend, Daniel Wong, Jennifer found someone who could get the job done. The price to have her parents killed was just $10,000. It's a shocking, almost unbelievable number for something so final. And what was the prize at the end of all this? She expected to inherit around $500,000. The difference between those two numbers is just stark. $10,000 to take 2 lives, all for a perceived gain of $500,000 and a life of freedom with her boyfriend? Now, she wasn't acting alone. This was a whole conspiracy with a cast of characters. You had Jennifer, of course, as the mastermind. Her boyfriend, Daniel Wong, was the one who connected her with the fixer, a guy named Lenford Crawford. Crawford then brought in David Malvaganam, one of the hitmen, and Eric Carty, who was the driver. It was a whole deadly team assembled to carry out her plan. So after a 10-month trial, the initial verdict seemed to finally bring this awful story to a close. But in a really surprising legal twist, it turns out the battle for justice in this case is far from over. Back in 2014, the verdict was clear: guilty. Jennifer Pan, Daniel Wong, and 2 of their co-conspirators were all convicted of first-degree murder and attempted murder. The sentence was the same for all of them: life in prison with absolutely no chance of parole for 25 years. But the legal saga did not stop there. Almost a decade after that conviction, in May of 2023, an appeal court made a pretty shocking move. It ordered a brand new trial, specifically on the first-degree murder charge. That decision was later upheld. So while the attempted murder conviction still stands, the murder charge itself, that's now completely back up in the air. So you're probably wondering, why on earth would they order a new trial? Well, it all comes down to a really important legal argument. The appeal court decided that the original trial judge made a mistake. He only gave the jury 2 choices: either convict for a planned, first-degree murder or let them walk free. The judge didn't let the jury consider lesser charges, like second-degree murder or manslaughter, and the appeal court basically said, you should have. And all of this brings us back to the really haunting question at the very heart of this tragedy. Now, of course, nothing can ever justify murder, but the Jennifer Pan case is such a chilling reminder of what can happen when the pressure to be perfect becomes a kind of prison. It really forces us to ask, what is the ultimate cost of impossible expectations? Not just for the person living the lie, but for everyone caught in the fallout.